Okay, welcome everybody to How to Make a Business Case. I'm really excited about this super nerdy talk. And I hope all of you are excited. If you're not excited, what are you doing here with your Thursday night? You've got all kinds of choices. We're not here to take you hostage and make you stay. But hopefully we're all gonna have a really good time. For those of you who don't already know me, I am Holly. I'm a leadership coach for women in male-dominated industries. I'm also WIMBY's founder. I was a mining engineer for the first 10 years of my career. We're going to spend a lot of time actually talking about mining engineering tonight, so you'll learn a lot more about that if you don't know much about it. And I'm a huge nerd about feminism, leadership, and career, and I combine all of that stuff together to do the work that I do today. And I think the work that I do is really best summed up by this graph. This is a graph that shows the percentage of women who stay with their careers over time. And you can see that for professional women generally, they do a pretty good job of staying with their careers over the course of 20 or so years that was done in this study. So about 15% or so of them leave over the course of a 20-year career. But for women in STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and math, aka pretty much all of us, these numbers are abysmal. 60% leave over a 20-year career. And it happens early too, right? You can see here that 37% are gone by 7 years in, which is huge. And I'm on this graph too. I'm somewhere over here, leaving about 10 years into my career. So I'm in good company. So everything that I do in WIMBY and in my work is to move this pink line closer to this yellow line and maybe even make it up to 100%. So that is some context for what I like to get up to in the world. Okay. So let's get a little bit of context for why we're talking about business cases, because it's a funny little thing, and you're probably wondering, well, how does this relate to the pink line on the graph, Holly? Well, my question for you is, do you want to move up the ladder at work? Do you want to get a promotion? Do you want to, have increased responsibility? If you do, then there's good news. Your boss probably does want to help you. When I work with leaders, I find that a lot of times they're really concerned with helping their staff develop. It's something they actively really, really want to do. They're often incentivized and kind of measured on those kinds of things by their own bosses themselves. So there's a lot of people out there who actually really do want to help. And what they say to me in these coaching sessions when they're telling me how they want to advance their staff is they say, you know what, she's really smart, she's really ambitious, I totally like her and I'd love to promote her, but she's just not ready yet. Who here has heard she's just not ready? Has anyone said that about you? People have definitely said that about me at various points in my career, and it's pretty common. So this is actually so common that studies show that only 72 women for every 100 men get promoted into the first layer of management at companies. So that comes from McKinsey and Lean In's Women in the Workplace study in 2019. And this is actually the biggest leak in the so-called leaky pipeline of women as they move up the ladder, or as they, descend down that pink line on that graph. 72% is really bad, and it actually improves as you get more senior, or at least that's what they found in this study. But a lot of women just never make it up past that first hurdle. So for me, this is a conversation tonight about one of the many ways that we can improve women getting through that first hurdle. So here's the inside scoop. When your boss says you're just not ready, this can mean a lot of things. There's a whole bunch of different things that this can mean, a lot of it pretty gendered. But one of the things that it means is you suck at business, unfortunately. It's very, very sad. So I want to tell you a little bit of a client story that will help illustrate this. So this is my client, Laura. I've changed her name, obviously, to protect her fabulous, wonderful self-identity. And Laura was stuck at the manager level for a really long time in her career, actually for 1.5 years. Yikes. She had been trying and trying and trying and asking and advocating to get herself to move up to a director level position. She was really frustrated. When she and I met, it had been 1.5 years already of trying to do that. And when she talked to her boss, he said the old chestnut of "you're just not ready." And you can see already on Laura's face how excited she is to hear that. Yikes, just like me. So you're just not ready. And Laura, being the excellent career-minded person that she was, asked for some feedback. She said, well, is it because of my communication? And her boss said, yes. Laura nearly died. That really hurt her feelings. And she left that conversation going, it's because I'm not confident enough. My boss is really hard to convince of things. He's a super challenging guy. He always wants to know everything. And I just don't think I have the confidence to go head to head with him. And I think he's picking that up, and that's what's in the way. But when we talked to her boss, what her boss was actually thinking is that she never really gives me all the information I need. It's not that she's not confident enough. I don't know if what she's proposing is actually really a good idea for the business or not. And so an important lesson here that Laura learned and that I want y'all to learn tonight is that style doesn't equal content necessarily. And for women, we tend to proactively think that the style is the thing that's getting in the way. We think it's the way we deliver the message. It's how we communicate. It's the confidence with which we approach a situation. And a lot of the narratives in the media really support that. And actually, even performance review data supports that. Women tend to get way more feedback around communication style and sort of the way they show up at work, as opposed to more more hard business skill focused feedback than men do. So there's a really good reason that we kind of reach for those explanations, but they're not necessarily accurate. So just be cautious if, like Laura, you're going, oh, this is probably a confidence thing, or this is a delivery thing, or this is a communication thing. It might actually be content. And the good news is if it's content, that's actually easier to fix in some ways. And the cool thing about Laura was that her content kind of did suck, right? Like, as lovingly as possible. Laura was a wonderful person, had some really good ideas, but the way that she talked about them wasn't that compelling. So she and I worked together for 6 months, and we were able to fix that. And something amazing happened. Laura got promoted to VP, which is such an amazing thing. Now, if you remember from the very beginning, Laura just wanted to be a director. She actually moved up 2 whole levels within 6 months because she got so much better at being clear with her boss about what business opportunities she was offering him when she brought her ideas to the table. So this is really an amazing story. I've never been more excited than I've been for Laura when she got that yes. And that's the power of the thing that we're going to be learning tonight. It's the thing that can take you from somebody who has been trying for 1.5 years to get your boss to see your potential to somebody who has got that promotion 2 levels up, and your boss is saying it's a great decision, best decision you ever made. So very, very exciting. And let's dig into the details. Let's understand how managers think, right? Because that's what Laura had to do from the beginning. She had to go, well, what is my manager looking for? So we'll use this this behoodied avatar of a software development manager here as an example of how managers make decisions. And I'll bring a little bit in as well of the way that I make decisions when I've been a manager as well. It's not just how male managers make decisions, it's also how I've done it. Okay, so there's really 5 questions that most managers think about when they're evaluating an idea. So question number 1 is, what's the business value? AKA, what's in this for me, right? Or what's in this for us even? Second is, what's this going to cost us? Third is, what's the plan for us to get this value? Like, it's all cool if we can have this pie in the sky idea that we can make this money, but can we really, really do it? And then, is it actually likely that we get this value? So we've got a plan that's maybe feasible, but is it really likely to transpire the way that we're hoping? And then finally, is this really the best use of my resources, or is there something else I should be doing instead of this particular idea that you've brought to me? So we're going to go through all 5 of these points tonight and really look in detail at how these work, how bosses think about them, how you can talk about them, so that you understand how to go to your boss with an idea with all these questions ready to answer so that you get the yes that you're looking for. Okay. Let's get started. Number 1, what's the business value? So I want to introduce you to a good friend of mine that I call the business alien. So the business alien, as you can guess from the name, is brand new to Earth, doesn't really understand much about how anything works here because they've never been around it. And so the things that you need to know about the business alien are that he is super cute, super curious, and a total noob about Earth, just doesn't get it. But the good news is, since he's super curious, he's asked us a bunch of questions, and we have explained to him a little bit about how this human thing of business works. So to keep it simple, we've told the business alien that business is basically about 3 things. Number 1, making more money. Number 2, spending less money. And number 3, reducing the risk of both making more money and spending less money. It really all boils down to making more money at the end of the day, but it's these three things. So this is all the business alien knows about how the world of business works. So if you take an idea to him, you say, hey, business alien, I'm going to start a makeup company. You know, I'm Kylie Jenner. I've got a massive following on Instagram, and I think that selling lip kits is the thing for me. Then he's going to go, okay, why would you bother selling lip kits? And you'd go, oh, because people will buy it. And he goes, okay, well, why would I care that people buy it? Because when people buy it, then they'll give me money. And he goes, oh, I get it. That's why this is about business, because it's number one, making more money. So he's very, very literal, and he will keep asking you why until he understands how the idea relates back to number 1, 2, or 3 on this list. Excellent. Thanks, business alien. Super helpful. Okay. So you might be going, hey, weren't we talking about value? What does this weird alien have to do with anything, Holly? I don't get why you're sitting here telling me about this. And yeah, we were talking about that. So let's connect the dots. If you want to create business value, you have to tie your idea back to something that the business alien can understand, right? You don't want to present your boss with an abstract idea. Hey, I want us to make lip gloss. You want to tie it back into the thing that the business alien will care about, AKA making money. So you might be going, okay, well, what if my idea doesn't connect to one of those three things? What if I can't find the connection? Well, if that's the case for you, then actually maybe your idea just kind of sucks, right? That was a little bit the case for Laura at the beginning. She had some ideas that didn't really work. But it might be that you haven't looked hard enough either. So, let's do some examples and I'll show you how this works in real life. So let's start with idea number 1, buy a haul truck. So I'm a mining engineer, so I've picked a mining example. For those of you who aren't aware, haul trucks are those like giant house-sized yellow trucks that drive around with rocks in the back of them on mine sites. I'm sure you've seen these around. And so my idea is that we will buy one more of these for our mine site to improve our production. Let's look at this through the business alien lens. Okay, so the business alien goes, how is this going to help us? Is this going to help us make more money? And the answer is yes. If we buy one more truck, that means we'll be able to carry more rocks. And those rocks have, let's say gold in it. In a gold mine, they'll have gold in it. And then we'll be able to sell more gold because we will have been able to move more gold. So yes, this will help us make more money. And then the business alien goes, well, is this going to help us spend less money? Not really. It's probably going to cost us a little more actually, because we have to move more rocks. So it's not going to help us with number 2. And is it going to change the risk towards us making money or spending money? No, not really. But the good thing is we already understand how this relates to business because this is a money-making project. So yay, the business alien understands this is about making money. That's why we're buying this big yellow truck. Cool. So that's easy. Now let's try a second idea. This is my favorite idea. I really hope this works. I hope the business alien loves it. I would like to take 50 weeks of vacation per year. It's going to be amazing. I'm going to lounge around in my house. I'm going to go on vacation once coronavirus is over. I think this is the best idea I've ever had for a business. Okay, what do you think, business alien? Okay, is this going to help us make more money? Well, probably not, right? In theory, wherever I'm working, they're paying me to come to work because I help them make money. If I don't show up for 50 weeks out of the year, I guess the amount of time that I'd spend making them more money, I'm not going to spend it anymore, right? So it probably won't actually help them make any more money. So not number 1. Number 2, is this going to help reduce costs? Well, no. I mean, in theory, it could if they didn't want to pay me, but really what I'm proposing is paid 50 weeks vacation, not unpaid 50 weeks vacation, which I would be way less excited about. So this will not help us spend less money. And this is not going to do anything to reduce the risk of us being able to make money or spend less money. If anything, it might increase the risk once customers realize that there's somebody on the payroll who literally never shows up to the office. They might correctly think that this is not a very serious business, and then maybe, pull some orders or choose not to re-up a subscription with us. So ultimately, this idea fails on all 3 counts, and the business alien goes, I don't really understand why this is a business idea. And he's right. It's just an idea for me to have 50 weeks vacation. Doesn't really help the business. So nice try. Back to the drawing board, Holly. No 50 weeks of vacation for you. Time to work on that haul truck thing instead. Okay, so that's it, right? We just have to find one of those 3 reasons, and then we've done it. We've convinced our boss. Life is easy. Well, not quite. We still have to quantify it. We can't just assert that the value is there. We need to know how much value. So let's have a little bit of math time, friends. we'll come back to our idea, the successful idea that we had of buying an extra haul truck, and start there. Okay, so I'm going to use an example of the last mine that I worked at, which is Detour Gold. It's a gold mine in Northern Ontario. And we'll pull some data from 2018 that's publicly available online. So in 2018, we know that at Detour Gold, they produced 621,000 ounces of gold in that year. And we know the price of gold that year as well. That was, $1,269 per ounce. So overall, in 2018, we could do the math, and we know that Detour Gold made about $788 million that year. Easy, right? So again, we're trying to bring this back to the haul truck thing. So we know we made $788 million that year, and we had 36 haul trucks operating at that time. So we can turn that into how much money we made per haul truck, which is about $22 million, right? Easy peasy. So if I bring another truck on board, it's a reasonable assumption to say that we'll probably make $22 million again, right? Simple. Great, so the value of this is $22 million. Excellent idea, much better than that 50-week vacation thing, which earned us $0 and in fact cost us money and maybe customers. So the boss is going, okay, now this is getting interesting. Notice already that, hey boss, I've got an idea that will make us $22 million is already much more interesting than what if we buy one more giant yellow truck? Much cooler, right? So this is getting interesting, but obviously there's a few more questions. And so the next thing that we're going to look at is what's it going to cost? It's not like somebody's just going to hand us $22 million for free, right? We have to go buy a truck and do all these other things to get that money in our hands. So let's do a little more math and figure that out. Okay, so we know that haul trucks cost about $5 million. That's a standard cost for a haul truck. And haul trucks last about 5 years before you have to replace them. You can actually keep using them for like 15, 20 years or something like that, but they wear out all the pieces, all the parts and the hardware so quickly that you basically have to replace them every 5 years anyways. So we've got a $5 million haul truck, and we're going to use it over the course of 5 years. So that turns into a cost of about $1 million per truck per year. And that's the capital cost. That's just what it costs to buy the thing. Then we have to actually run it, right? There's things like fuel costs and the person who drives the truck. We're going to wear out the tires eventually. It'll need oil changes. You have to pay the wages of the mechanics who fix it, all that stuff. And then not only that, to run the truck, but it's going to move material. And then when you move that material, you'll have to send it through the mill and process it and turn it into gold bars and then eventually sell it. So there's this whole extra cost, not just of what it takes to run the truck, but actually the entirety of the production cycle for those rocks that the truck is going to carry have to be included as well in what we call like an operating cost. So for that, for a truck or for a single year, the operating cost per truck per year is going to be about $19.9 million, way higher than the capital cost. Very expensive, right? So overall, we're looking at about $21 million per year in total cost to run that truck. Cool, right? Cost of $21 million. Question 2 answered. Now, you might be noticing, like I am, that that's actually really close to the value that we said earlier, that $22 million. We were like, ooh, that sounds really good. Now, suddenly, it's almost the same as the cost. So let's do some quick math and make sure that we're not messing this up too badly. Okay, so we know that the truck was going to bring us $21.8 million per year. And we know that it was going to cost us 20.9. So in total per year, the profit that we'll make is going to be $915,000, just under $1 million. So thank God it's a positive number. That's very good. And actually, we're not just going to run this for a single year. We're going to be running this for 5 years. So we know that overall, this project is going to be worth about $4.6 million in profit. So excellent. Pretty good number. It's positive. It has $1 million behind it, which I like. Yeah, and our boss is pretty interested, as you can see from the hearts in his eyes. $4.6 million, yes, please. I'm very interested in that. Now the question is, well, can we really deliver that? Is that $4.6 million actually going to happen? So the next question is, what's the plan for me to actually go out and get this value? You definitely need a plan, and I'm not just saying that because I'm a mine planner. Planning is really, really essential. Why? Well, because of Firefest. Who here remembers the utter boondoggle that is Firefest? I'm seeing a couple nods, yeah. By the way, if you are a PMP, I know there's a couple in the audience, or a project engineer or a mine planner, content warning, the next part is going to get rough for you because we're going to talk about the total disaster that was Fyre Fest. So feel free to mute me for a minute if that's too much for you to take, because I know it's very stressful for me. Okay, so for those of you who don't remember, Fyre Fest was a music festival in 2017 that went famously terribly and ended up with some of the founders of it being put in jail for fraud. Very, very bad. Now, it seemed like a good idea initially because Coachella famously in 2018 made $114 million in profit. Now, some of that probably was the fact that Beyonce was headlining, but $114 million in profit is nothing to sneeze at. Seems like not bad value for your money, right? And that actually is 23 haul trucks worth of profit. So like much better than my idea, right? So in theory, good concept. And they had what seemed like a really great event plan. They said they were going to get a whole bunch of really gullible rich kids to come and buy tickets, that they were going to sell them on the idea of hosting a music festival on Pablo Escobar's island. They were going to use the specter of the drug trade, you know, on these gullible rich kids who obviously have never been involved in the drug trade and wouldn't understand that as being awful and dramatic, but instead as gritty and cool. So yeah, it's going to be on Pablo Escobar's island, super cool. They were going to sell it using supermodels and a bunch of adorable pigs, you know, frolicking together in the surf in these adorable videos that they put out on social media that make it seem like just paradise. They were going to tell people that they were going to have luxury villas, so they'd be like sleeping in these gorgeous places while they attend these, you know, music festivals that had Blink 182. I don't think the Blink 182 was the main headline here, but I guess it's a draw for some people. And then finally, they said there's going to be gourmet meals, and so you'll have a really delicious time while you're at this festival too. So on paper, it all worked, right? It seemed excellent. It actually sold a ton of tickets, really fast. They sold tickets. But they didn't plan this event in literally any detail at all, like none. They gave themselves 6 weeks to make this event happen, whereas normally it would have taken over a year when it wasn't on an island that was uninhabited. And with experienced event planners. They had a totally inexperienced team. They had not enough time to do it. Famously, they Googled how to get a stage set up 4 weeks before the event, and then hired whoever they found on Google to come and design their stage. Just nothing was figured out. And they actually didn't even have enough space on the island for all the tickets that they sold. They couldn't put all the people who were going to come to this festival on the island, give them somewhere to sleep, and crucially, give them somewhere to have porta potties. There was not enough room on the island for all the porta potties they needed for everyone to attend the event, which was a crisis because if you're going to do anything, make sure people have porta potties, right? But they didn't manage that at Fyre Fest, and it all went bad. So in the end, the wonderful event plan that they had on the left with the gullible rich kids who were going to be coming turned into a disaster with instead a bunch of entitled rich kids who were angry and drunk and had just gotten off a plane and hadn't eaten in hours. And instead of doing it on Pablo Escobar's island as they had planned, turns out that was way too small. And so they held it in effectively an abandoned parking lot on another island. And this place was super scary. If you look at the photos from then, they've got these giant cliffs dropping off into the ocean that I'm certain drunk kids would just literally fall off like lemmings. Not good, not good. Instead of supermodels and pigs, they found that no Jenners, no Hadids, and no pigs actually attended the event at all. It was all a marketing scam, and these models did not show up. Instead of luxury villas, they ended up with FEMA relief tents that blew over almost in the wind and got soaking wet in a rainstorm, making everybody's beds totally wet and uninhabitable. And then instead of gourmet meals, they had famously the Instagram sandwich, which, if any of you remember, was a very sad styrofoam container with a slice of bread, a very sad piece of cheese, and salad with no dressing. And it blew up all over the internet. And it was very, very bad for poor Billy McFarland and his business partner, Ja Rule, who at the end of the event said, "I too was hustled, scammed, bamboozled, hoodwinked, and led astray by the Fyre Festival organizers." An excellent example of Ja Rule trying really, really hard to cover his own ass in the wake of this colossal mess that he had created. But actually what they did was just not planned it at all. Yeah. So the lesson here is make a realistic plan with realistic timelines. Otherwise, all that value that you talked about earlier is irrelevant. It just won't happen. And you will end up like Ja Rule, hoodwinked and led astray and bamboozled, or worse, like Billy McFarland and in federal prison for fraud. Yikes, not great. All right, so let's come back to the example of the haul truck, because we're trying really hard not to be like the Firefest organizers. So let's see how we can do that. All right, so with a haul truck, here's what we need to do. Number one, we're going to have to phone up Caterpillar, who's going to sell us the truck, and say, hey, we've got $5 million. We want you to send us a truck. Then we're going to have to arrange shipping. Getting a haul truck on a mine site is not really a simple thing. You can't just drive it there. It's literally the size of a house. It will not fit on a highway. And so it actually has to come in pieces over many, many weeks. And you have to have somewhere to store all those pieces, and you have to arrange all the logistics around shipping all these pieces of this haul truck to you. Then you need to create a laydown, which is basically somewhere on the mine site that for several weeks you can put all those pieces back together to turn it from a pile of haul truck pieces into a truck that works. You obviously need to hire the mechanics who will do all that building on the laydown of the haul truck, and they need the tools to do it too. And then finally, just like at Firefest, you need to make sure that you have rooms and meals at camp, preferably better than the sandwich, or you will definitely have a revolt on your hands, just like you did at Firefest. And because we learned the lessons of Firefest, we need to make sure that there's a porta potty at the laydown so that these people can use the washrooms. Excellent. So the timeline for that is probably about 2 to 3 months. That would be typical for doing all those things that we just talked about on a mine site. Okay, so we've got a plan. Now what could possibly go wrong? Just like what Ja Rule would have said 6 weeks out from Firefest. So the next question is it likely that I actually do get the value that we're talking about? So we've looked at 3 things up until this point, basically. We've looked at the value, the cost, and the plan. And from here, we're going to ask ourselves 3 questions. Number 1, are my assumptions reasonable, robust, valid around how I'm going to get this value, cost, and plan? 2, what could go wrong? The question that they never asked at Firefest. And 3, if things do go wrong, how wrong will they go? So we're going to look at these piece by piece for each of value, cost, and plan. Okay, so starting with the value, we had that $22 million, right? Let's go through these questions. So are my assumptions valid? Well, when we made that $22 million calculation, we assumed a couple of things. We assumed that the trucks would carry the same amount of material as all the rest of them have been carrying in 2018. We assumed that we'd get a certain price for the gold that was inside of it. And we assumed that the rocks inside of the trucks carry a certain amount of gold, right? The grade of the rocks is consistent with what it's been over the last year. So each of those assumptions are probably okay to make, but there's a lot that could change, right? When we say what could go wrong, well, it might be that gold prices go up or down. It might be that next year, when the truck is in operation, we're actually mining in a different area and we have less high grades than we had now. Or we might find that we don't get quite the payload that out of the trucks that we expected, like that they don't carry as much rocks as we thought. Either the shovel operators are not very well trained, and so they're not filling them all the way up to the tippy top, or some problem with tire pressure, and so they can't. There's all kinds of reasons why they might not be as full as we expected. It could even be that the trucks, once we have them, can't get filled up by shovels because the shovels are already busy filling the trucks that we've got. If they're at full capacity and working 24/7, adding one more truck might not actually help at all. It might just be one more truck burning fuel, but not really moving any extra dirt. So these are all things that we'll have to double check with the mine planners to understand where it is that we're going to be mining, what our assumptions are going to be around how much gold we'll get in the rocks, what the gold price is going to look like, and whether or not we can assume that we'll fill up the trucks in a similar way. If we don't get that right, there could be some pretty big consequences. If we got the thing wrong about the shovels, for example, if the shovels are already fully busy filling up the trucks that we have, and we add one more truck, that could wipe out the value entirely, and we'd be left just with the costs, but having moved no extra rocks. So that would be very bad. So that's a check we're going to want to do before we take this idea to our boss. Okay, so we know we've got some homework now around the value. Let's take a look at the cost. So costing was 21 million. Let's do the same questions here. Are the assumptions valid? Well, when we look at that cost, we know the capital cost pretty well, right? We're pretty sure that when Caterpillar quotes us $5 million, it's going to cost us $5 million. The only thing that might be different if we were buying that truck today is, we know that shipping costs have gone up a lot during coronavirus, like 30%, 60% in some cases. And so we might actually have the portion of that cost that's represented by the logistical challenge of moving all that material to site. That might be a little bit higher, so that could be interesting. And then we've got a whole bunch of assumptions built in around the costs for the whole operation, right? Remember when we did the operating costs, we didn't include just the cost of the fuel and the oil changes and all those things that seem associated with the truck. We had to include all of the cost for the full life cycle of that dirt that we were moving. So there's a lot of assumptions built in there, including, how much money it costs us to take those rocks from being solid rocks in the ground and blast them so they're in smaller pieces, including what the cost looks like for us to send it through the mill and how much they have to spend on chemicals to turn that into a gold bar. There's lots and lots of things that could change there as well. And so if we get that wrong by a little bit, that could be really complicated for us as well. So that's another thing that we're going to have to check in on with the mine planners and go, okay, so we've got these set of assumptions about our operating costs. Is there any reason that those are going to change? And operating costs can change by quite a bit on a mine site. Like a really famous example of this is, back in sort of the late 2000s, early 2010s, we were in a big commodities super cycle. And so mines were just like pumping out material, going as hard as they could, trying to move as many rocks as possible. And one of the consequences of that was that you basically couldn't find tires anywhere for a haul truck. They were really expensive, first of all, like literally $40,000 a tire. And haul trucks need a lot of tires. They need 6 tires. So you're looking at basically $250,000 every time you want to change a set of tires on a truck, a ton of money. But more importantly, other than the cost, was that you basically couldn't get them. Demand was so high that you'd be waiting 6 months to a year just to get an order of tires in. So there was a time where I could call up Caterpillar and order a new truck, and I could get the truck, but I wouldn't be able to get the tires for it for 6 months to a year. And so it might not have been helpful, and the cost profile of my site might have changed drastically during that time. So it might not be valid anymore for us to go out and make this investment, or just the operating costs associated with the tires of buying new tires could become so high that the calculation that we're doing now around cost could be way too low. So it's really important to think about whether or not those costs are likely to change over the length of this project. All right. So you'll remember that our profit for this was $4.6 million, which was actually just under a mil, $915,000 a year, right? And I really want to take a second here to look at this, because part of the question we've been asking is what could go wrong and how wrong, right? So we've got $915,000 of profit per year, and our costs are $21 million per year. So really, that means that we only have a 4.3% margin of error. If my costs were 5% higher, suddenly there would be no more profit. I would not be making money on this deal. This would actually be a money-losing venture to buy this truck. So 4.3% is really tiny. It's a small confidence interval for all the variability that I just described, right? Around gold price, around whether we're going to be mining in the same place, around whether or not, tire costs or shipping costs increase. It would be really easy to see a budget changing by about 5%, right? So that has me a little bit worried when we think about it that way. So when we think about what could go wrong and how wrong, things actually don't have to go very wrong for this project to not work well. So at this point, our boss is likely going, oh my God, this is terrifying. I don't know if this is a really good project for us because it's not a lot of wiggle room. We have to control the costs perfectly. We have to be exactly right on what value we're going to get out of it. I'm nervous about that, right? Let's keep pushing through though, just for the sake of it, and we'll look at the plan. So are the assumptions valid? Let's take a look at what our plan was. So when we look at this list, calling Caterpillar, arranging shipping, creating the laydown, getting the mechanics and making sure they have somewhere to stay, most of these things are going to be relatively straightforward. They might, be a 2-week delay, for example, in finding somewhere to stay in the camp if it's full, but it's not going to be a huge difference. The big things on this list, the big complexity on this list is going to be whether or not Caterpillar's got trucks in stock right now and how quickly they could get to us. There might be a really short lead time, or it could be really, really long if there's been a lot of demand. That's a big variable for us. And the other big variable is whether or not we have space to create that laydown and where. Sometimes depending on how much space you need, see this less with trucks and more with shovels, but depending on where you need to create that space and how much space you need, you might not be able to create it on demand. You might have to wait until a certain point in the mine plan so that there's an area that you're not planning on being in and mining in and occupying for a little while. So the biggest variables here in our plan are around creating that laydown and phoning up Caterpillar. So again, these are things that we're going to have to investigate because, you know, if we were in the middle of, 2012 when we wanted to do this, we'd call up Caterpillar and they'd say, ha, fat chance, we can't get you the tires. It'll be a year and a half, right? And that would really change a lot of assumptions that we've made around how much value we think we'd get out. So we're going to look into that with both Caterpillar and the mine planners when it comes to where we could put that laydown and when we could put it there. Because if we get it wrong, this is going to change things for us. All right. So we've looked through all of these three questions. Are my assumptions robust? What could go wrong? And how wrong could it go if it does go wrong for all of value, cost, and plan? And at this point, what we can see is that fragile business cases don't get the green light, right? And this one is actually feeling a little bit more fragile than I'd like because of that like low margin of error on our profit, on our costing, and on our value. So the lesson number 2 is that we've got to look at those risks so that we can mitigate them. Some of these risks I'll be able to address just by, talking with mining engineers, talking with Caterpillar, really getting into more detail about the plan. But some of them will probably always be there. There's always going to be little cost overruns from time to time, right? And so, it's important for us to quantify that risk and make plans to mitigate it before we talk about it with our boss, because otherwise it won't seem like a very good plan. All right. So right now the boss is going, all right, so the margin on this is not ideal. It's not really making as much money as I'd like, as safely as I'd like. It's kind of a maybe. Is this really our best idea? Is there something else that we could be doing instead? It's a great question. So question number 5 is this really the best use of my resources? Managers and all of us really are always trying to optimize for those things that the business alien wants. So this is a really important question because we have options. We don't have to do this plan just because I like it, just because it's my pet plan and I made a whole presentation about it here to y'all today. It doesn't have to be the be all and end all. We can kill our darlings if we have to. And actually doing this might mean that we don't do a better idea that we could do instead, right? We only have so much time and money and staff to go out and do these business ideas. And so if we do this, we might not be able to do something else, and that could be worse for us. So we're really talking about opportunity cost here, right? Which is the idea that if I do something, I will lose the ability to do something else. It's the cost of taking that opportunity. So one way to look at this is if I had $5 million to spend, would I spend it on this project, or would I spend it on something else that would get me more value, easier, quicker, faster, with less risk? Or another way we can look at it is if I wanted to make $4.6 million, the same amount of money as I'm making here, is this really the best way to do it? Can I find another way to make that $4.6 million that works better for me? So obviously neither of these questions are what they asked at Fyre Festival. One of the most ironic things about Fyre Fest actually is that it's an incredibly silly plan. Fyre Fest was never really supposed to be a music festival. It's actually an app. Fyre Media was a software company that was making an app that would help you book acts like Ja Rule or Beyonce to come and like play at your event. Like if you wanted to have, I don't know, Kelly Rowland sing at your wedding or something, in theory, you could have used the Fyre app to do it. And they conceived of Fyre Festival as a way of promoting the app. They're going to go, oh, we booked all these amazing, acts using the Fyre Festival or the Fyre app, and now they're playing at the festival. But actually, this is deeply bizarre, deeply insane as a plan, because, just think about it. Imagine if they had spent all the money and all the time they were going to spend, having this boondoggle of a Fyre Festival. What if they just spent that on Google Ads? Or what if they just paid Kendall Jenner the $250 million they paid her for the promo for this festival and instead got her to plug the app? I mean, in that case, then probably they would have had a few more customers, right? They definitely wouldn't have gone to jail for fraud, and they'd still be in business. Arguably, that would be a much better approach. It would have been way less complicated. It certainly would have cost them less money. They'd still have their freedom. So I would argue that actually Fyre Festival, their big failing other than planning was that they didn't do the opportunity cost analysis and go, hold on, what are we doing here? Should we really be running a music festival? Or is there any better way to do the thing we're trying to do? And they honestly just got caught up in wanting to, run a cool festival on Pablo Escobar's island, right? All right. So again, we're not going to be them. We're going to look at this rationally ahead of time before we sell, 8,000 tickets to a bunch of entitled rich kids. Okay, so back to our idea of buying a haul truck. We know that we want to make $4.6 million from this, right? So how else could we do it? How else can we make that $4.6 million that doesn't involve this haul truck? Well, we know that our plan was to buy one new truck and that we have 36 trucks on site right now. So really all we're talking about here is a 2.8% production increase. That's it, 2.8%, tiny. The cool thing, one of my favorite things about working on mines is how tiny increases turn into giant sums of money. Like if I got 2.8% better at answering emails or doing anything that I do in my current day-to-day job, nobody would give me $4.6 million. But on a mine site, that happens. It's pretty cool. So anyways, 2.8%, that's it. And so what that look like if we took that 2.8% increase and we just tried to increase production, 24 hours a day, how much would that turn out to be for our existing haul truck fleet? That's only 40 minutes a day. 40 minutes more production in a day on our existing haul trucks would net us $4.6 million. Amazing, easy, right? We can find a way to do that. Let's get creative. So here's my idea. Idea number 3, we're going to hire the spouses of the people who work on the mine site right now as drivers to come in and cover the lunch shift and breaks that the haul truck drivers take on our existing fleet of 36 trucks. This is actually not an original idea with me. This is really common. Mine sites do this all the time. They do this a lot in Australia, actually, and BHP famously did this as part of a diversity, equity, and inclusion plan that they had back in, I think 2016 or something like that. So this is not an uncommon thing. So let's take a look at this excellent plan that I've come up with. So we're going to stagger our lunch shifts so that they're not all at the same time. So we'll maybe run them from 10 to 2 or something like that, 10:30 to 1:30. Everybody gets a slightly different lunch shift so that we can hire just a few people to cover all those lunches. We're going to hire those spouses to work for the hours when their kids are in school. A lot of times on mine sites, spouses are not working because they're being, stay-at-home parents. And so if we can make it so that they're not working full shifts, but they're just working when their kids are in school, then that'll work really well for them. This will be great because the families will get more money because the spouses will be employed for part of the day. And so they'll be more likely to stay in town. We'll have less turnover in our employees. We won't have to train as many people, which will be excellent. There's going to be more working women, and not always women. Not all spouses are women. On mine sites, though, by and large, what we're talking about here is employing more women. So that's a really good thing. And hence why BHP was doing this as an intervention to help their diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it's going to cost us about $1 million less per year because remember, that's how much in capital cost we have to pay to buy a haul truck. That $5 million over 5 years is $1 million per year that we don't have to pay because we're just having these people use the trucks we already have. Awesome, right? Really good idea. So many good things about it. So in the end, if I do all the math, I'm not going to make you sit through it. We can make $9.6 million just by hiring a couple of wives to come in while their kids are at school and run some haul trucks. Excellent. I love it. And it's way less risky than the other plan because I don't have to worry about shipping. I don't have to worry about, all this complexity that we had with the previous plan. I just have to hire a couple people, train them using the trainers that we already have on site, send them away to the haul trucks, and send them home with a paycheck. Amazing. All right, so now my boss is floored, very excited. What? Let's definitely do this. Hearts are in his eyes. If the emoji app that I used to create this could do dollars in his eyes, that's what he would have because this is a sick idea. Okay, so now your boss is going, oh, and by the way, let's get you on some more strategic projects because this was a really, really smart idea. And then we're like, hooray, we've done it. We're just like Laura. Our boss is obsessed with us and we're going to become a VP. Yay, yay, yay. Excellent. Okay, so the lesson here really is that the best idea wins. You'll notice that we didn't end this presentation with a perfectly crafted idea that I had from the beginning that we ended up adopting. We abandoned the idea that I started with. We're not buying a new haul truck. We're doing something else entirely. And we're doing that because we can make way more money. So I really want you to understand that as you go through this process, the idea that you come in with might not be the idea that you end up pitching to your boss. That's totally okay. I want you to do the work ahead of time so that you pitch the better idea to your boss, not the original idea, which would have had him go, I just don't think it's worth the money. And I might not have fully understood why if I hadn't gone through all 5 of those questions. So it's really important to do this work ahead of having that conversation with your boss, so you've got a good picture of whether or not the business case that you're making is robust. All 5 of those questions matter. So here they are again, so we can remember what they are. So number 1 is, what's the business value? Why does the business alien care about this? How does this make sense in terms of making more money, spending less money, or reducing the risk? Number 2 is, what's this going to cost me? As we've seen with this truck, the cost really added up, right? It wasn't just how much it was to purchase it, but actually how much it was going to be to run it. And that ended up being pretty close to what the value was. Then what's the plan for me to get this value? The plan for us was pretty reasonable, but for Firefest, the plan was the thing that sunk them, so really important. And then once we do that plan, how likely is it to really hold up? Have the assumptions that I've made as I've been doing this been valuable and valid and good and robust? Or am I, skating on thin ice, which it turns out from our initial proposal, we were, right? We only had to be wrong by 5%, and then we would have lost money on this deal. And then finally, is this really the best use of our resources? Could we make more money doing this any other way? Turns out for us, the answer was yeah, there's a lot of ideas. I was talking about this earlier today with Daryl, who's a geologist, and like a geologist, she said, oh, it's easy. You just need to go and improve the mill, improve the recovery in the mill so that the gold that you send them in the rocks, they actually get a higher percentage of that out and turn into gold bars. And that's an easy way to do it too. If you can get 2.8% more gold out of your rocks, then you found a way to make $4.6 million, just like you did with the haul trucks, right? So there's actually tons of other ideas. We didn't go through every possible idea, but there's lots of other choices here too. Okay, friends, the goal of all of this always is to impress the business alien. Obviously impress your boss as well, but really everything that we're doing with those 5 questions is about impressing the business alien and making him think that this was an excellent idea that we had.